In this video, I want to discuss something that I wish I had learned sooner and implemented sooner as a business owner and photographer, which is how you make your clients' pre-booking consult calls easier for you. Meaning, you get on the call before a client books with you to meet with them and see if you're the right fit. And that call itself is not an uphill battle of holding your breath and crossing your fingers, hoping that they book, but rather you come into the call with a potential client already mostly ready to book with you even before they get on the call. And I heard about this idea first a few years back when I was actually listening to a business expert way outside of my own industry, by the way, and his name was Dan Henry, and he was talking about something called the pre-frame of the call. And this was a term I had never heard before. He said something about this that absolutely blew my mind. He said something to the effect of, the reason I'm good at sales as Dan Henry is not just because I can sell somebody 100% of the way on the call, but because I sell them 90% of the way before the call, and then the call is simply the close. The client is already 90% of the way convinced of working with me before they even join the call. And then they just need that last little 10% push on the call to finally make their decision. Now, when I heard this at the time, this absolutely blew my mind. I had always thought of the idea of the inquiry coming in from a client and getting on a sales call as like, this is my moment. I've got to sell them from the ground up on booking me, and I have to do it in the next 30 minutes of the sales call. And as many of you have experienced yourself, that approach is setting your calls up for a world of stress and anxiety. It sounds like a ton of pressure because it is a ton of pressure. It sounds like a very difficult task to sell people that way because it is, especially when you're selling clients at like a 4 to 5 figure price point, which is what most photographers are. However, what if your clients had already, before they even get on the call, they'd already gone through countless touch points with you before ever getting on the call with you, each one confirming further and further for them that you are the right choice for them. Now, like I said before, this is all what's called the pre-frame. The pre-frame is everything that happens beforehand. So think of the way your client first heard about you. Think of all the touch points and exposures they had with you over the weeks, months, or even years from the time when they first heard about you, leading up to them actually inquiring with you. Think of Instagram photos, video content, visits to your website, portfolio you shared, etc. And then even up till them inquiring, and then, you've got your confirmation page after they inquire, and maybe an autoresponder confirmation email, and maybe an official response email from you, and maybe automated emails that remind them of your call together. See, all of this is what's called the pre-frame. You are framing the edges of this call with them so that they've gone through all of these highly intentional touch points and heard highly curated verbiage about what it's like to work with you, how available you are or are not, what your value is, how high your value is, and so on. Now, I want you to ask yourself, what would have to be true? What would have to be communicated? And in what way would it have to be communicated to the client so that the lion's share of your brand, your value, your quality, your personality, your style, your availability, even your pricing, etc., was all communicated to a client before the call to pre-frame them? Now, don't get me wrong. The magic often happens on the call, right? That magic happens when people inquire with you and you sail them all the way through the booking. But this is how a lot of your inquiry process may go, and this isn't the best way to do it. You get an inquiry, your clients share the bare minimum in their inquiry, and they're just kind of like kicking tires, so to speak, because they're not all that interested. You didn't do that pre-framing. And so then in that situation, you feel this overwhelming pressure to go on this uphill journey to communicate to them who you are, why they should book you, blah, 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 blah. But instead, what you should be doing, what should be happening is your clients should already be pre-framed with you. They should, they should have seen multiple fully blogged galleries from you by the time they get in a call with you. They should have been following along in your social media accounts, seeing you speak to the camera, seeing you speak about your personal life, seeing you share your imagery, seeing your approach to your work. They should know the kind of work you love to shoot. They should know what type of relationship you like to have with your clients. They should know what general region you live in and if and where you travel to. They should know the budget of weddings you usually shoot. They should know your personality and so on and so forth, so that you are selling to them little by little in all the weeks and months, maybe even years, before they are even ready to inquire with you. And then I'm going to take this even a step further. There are even things you can do to plant pre-framing seeds of two different things: scarcity and urgency. For example, when I tell a client, when they inquire with me, that their date is available and I'm sending an email back personally from me, I say, yes, your date is available as of right now. Okay? So I'm pre-framing them like it's available right now. I also put a line in inquiry response email. You can, by the way, get this inquiry response email template as a downloadable template below, which says in the ending section of that template, I say, to avoid disappointment, I book dates on a first come, first served basis as soon as the contract is signed and invoice is paid, and I don't disclose competing inquiries for the same dates. So the sooner we can get started, the sooner I can promise you that date on my calendar. See, in all of this verbiage, I'm planting pre-framing seeds that there is urgency and that there is scarcity around working with me, so that they can make a decision from an informed place with a dimension of urgency and scarcity, and not just be like, it doesn't matter when we book. And by the way, there's so many other ways to pre-frame as well outside of just what I've given you here. But what I want you to get out of this is a new perspective on how you communicate in your marketing and branding and your sales process. Please do not forego all the selling to the final step of the process, which is the consult call, the sales call, right? Sell to your clients, communicate your value, frame the sale, remind them of your scarcity well before the call actually happens. Like 90% of the work is up front, and all that needs to be covered in the call is that last 10% push that happens in the call with them, so you can, again, sail them over the edge with you. And once you can do this, watch how easy it becomes to book people when they inquire and hop on calls with you. So, as always, thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope this really changes the way you think about your sales call. I know it really changed things when I fully understood this and grasped this and then implemented it. And I fully believe this. If you do grasp this, this is going to directly impact your ability to sell overall. So hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and drop a comment with further questions or something you'd like to add or something you want me to answer. I always love interacting as much as possible with you guys. And with that said, I will see you guys next time.